It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Robert Edward Grant, the founder, chairman, and managing partner of Stratasys Crown, a growth equity holding company based in Newport Beach, California, with a broad portfolio of company and asset holdings spanning healthcare, clean energy, social media, and financial technology. In addition, he is the founder, chairman, and CEO of Concierge Key Health, the first on-demand service to the world's elite physician specialists. He is also the founder and vice chairman of Alpheon Corporation, a subsidiary of Stratasys Crown Holdings, a leader in the rapidly growing field of lifestyle healthcare, and based in Irvine, California. He served as the founding CEO of Concierge Key Health from 2017 until 18. Likewise, he served as the founding CEO of Alpheon from 2013 to 2016. He was formerly CEO and president of Bausch and Lomb Surgical in 2010. Prior to this, he led Allergan Medical as president from 2006 to 10. Robert has served on several corporate boards. He served as an independent board director of Myoscience Inc., AcuFocus, Reshape Medical, and presently serves on the boards of Alpheon Corporation and Zeligent Inc. Additionally, he serves as chairman and founder of Crown Sterling Limited, a fintech cryptography subsidiary of Stratasys Crown. Additionally, he served as on, basically he served on, this just goes on for pages. He's like, he's a legend in my mind, and I was so glad to get him on the show. So my first question is kind of crazy, but how does dentistry fit in healthcare, and how does dentistry look to you from your 30,000 feet for decades?
Well, I started, my first experience in dentistry was probably with a company called HGM Medical Lasers, which was out of Salt Lake City, that I worked for about 25 years ago. And then I spent some time as CEO of BioLase about 15 years ago, which is, I think, the first time I met you, Howard. And, I've always been super impressed with the dental community. And what you've built with Dentaltown is totally amazing. I've been tracking and following your work there for, the better part of 20 years. And it's really amazing to see what you've really been able to create in community. And I think, you've got all these dental practices that are all around the country. And very often being a doctor in private practice can be a lonely thing to do. And so when you've got a community around you of other doctors that can help you kind of deal with your issues, whether you're part of a chain or not, or maybe you can leverage off of some of the chain work, because there's some fantastic chains that are in dentistry. But basically, bringing community to dentistry, I think, is a really important thing. And I think it helps patient outcomes too. So, I think from the perspective of the larger healthcare standpoint, when you look at dentistry has been the leader probably in the cash pay segment for a very long time now. One of my businesses is Alpheon Credit, which we just entered into the dental market, and we provide loans and compete in the patient loan volume space. We do right now in elective surgery and aesthetics. We do about we're the number 2 player. We have about 25 to 30% of the market in that space, and compete against companies like Care Credit, which I'm sure you know, and many others. But dentistry is the largest by far elective surgery market in the United States. And I think that's because of the way that dentistry came about, after World War II, and looking to see where, what was going to be covered by health insurance and what was not. I think dentistry made a really brilliant move to not be part of what has become, this healthcare insurance industry over the last 50 years. And while there are some things that are reimbursed, it's still largely a cash pay segment, which I think is why dentistry continues to do well and thrive. And so I see it as a real teacher for the rest of healthcare, that now we're moving towards a healthcare paradigm, which is going to be more and more self-pay. And dentistry is on the front end of that. It has been on the front of that for a very long time, in fact. So it's one of the reasons why, the aesthetic market has benefited a lot from dental entrance, and learned a lot also on how to run a business by being customer-centric and doing a great job with customers. So I think dentistry plays a vital role in the future of where healthcare is going to go, and is already trending towards.
Well, you're a mathematician among other things, but just telling the kids out there, He's from Salt Lake City, started the laser company. All the laser companies have their roots in Salt Lake City because I forgot that one man. There was this one, who was the genius laser physicist at Salt Lake? Was he University of Salt Lake or was he BYU?
You know what? He was actually at Bell Labs for a while, but he's done work with the University of Utah. He passed away.
What was his name?
His name was Dr. McMahon. And he was the founder of HGM, but he had worked with Jim Hobart at Coherent, where I spent, 6 years working at Coherent as well in my career. He was a brilliant laser physicist. He was not the easiest guy in the world to work with. I'll say that. He's like reading, almost like meeting a caricature in life, because he was a very larger than life figure with his own planes and everything. And I remember working with him, and he chewed tobacco all the time. But he was one of these very salty characters that is in this healthcare industry's history. And
you said he passed away?
He did. He died in a plane crash. Here we are, the day after
Kobe.
Horribly tragic accident yesterday. But Dr. McMahon died in a plane crash. He was piloting himself. It was a Citation jet, and he was coming in for a landing approach in Atlanta, and he overshot the runway. It was a very dark, maybe foggy night. A very sad situation, but this guy definitely lived a very full life also. He was already in his 70s, I believe, when he passed away. So he lived a full life, but he lived on, literally on the edge of the knife all the time. So he's a fascinating character.
Would you call him a genius?
Oh, he was definitely a genius. No doubt he was a genius, but also, as many geniuses are, very eccentric as well.
Now, are you talking about yourself, or are you talking about Martin still?
You know what? I'm definitely, I don't know. I guess I might be a little bit eccentric. My wife would say I'm eccentric, I bet.
But it's amazing over the years how many dental companies I've ran into, they all had their roots from him.
Yeah, no, he really was an amazing guy, and just a very strong willpower, and it was almost like a bygone era type of a person. If you imagine kind of a character from like the late 19th century or something, what it would be like. He wore cowboy boots all the time, but he was also a brilliant physicist. So he was just this walking dichotomy. It was fascinating.
I want to add. You said something. You got to remember. I'm my audience a fourth are still in dental school. By the way, a dental student asked me at a seminar on Saturday, how do you know that? Where's the poll or whatever? Because I always say it in my show, send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com, and tell me how old you are, where you're from, or whatever. And but a quarter of them are still in dental school. And you said dentistry is moving towards more self-pay, but all they're hearing in school is that Bernie Sanders is going to be the president, and it's going to be free health care and free education. What would you say to a 25-year-old who's in dental school wondering if Bernie Sanders and healthcare will be free someday?
Well, first of all, I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to be president. It's not that I think he's a bad guy. One of the things I do like about Bernie, he's really passionate about what he believes in. It doesn't necessarily mean when you're passionate about what you believe in that it's the right thing for the country. I am very much a fan. Have you ever read the book by Ayn Rand called Atlas Shrugged?
Absolutely. Mandatory reading at Creighton.
Right? Creighton. Well, by the way, so actually I lived in Nebraska. I went to high school in Nebraska before I ever moved to Utah. And
what city in Nebraska? Where, Omaha, Lincoln?
Papillion. I graduated from Papillion High School, which is just a little bit outside of Omaha.
Well, you know what? It was so funny how what you learn when you're little and applies. I remember when Oklahoma was trying to get an NBA team. Mm-hmm. And they said, man, the market's too small. I'm like, no, man, I went to Creighton in Omaha. They had no professional sports, and Big Red football at Lincoln was a religion, and they had more devout fans than some of these biggest markets. And I called it. I said, if they go there and get Oklahoma like Nebraska got behind Big Red, I said they'll get the whole state, and they did. It's been very, very profitable. So yeah. But explain. So they know I'm a Milton Friedman fan. I mean, when I went to Creighton in 1980,
there's no free lunch.
Warren Buffett was, the Oracle Omaha was there, and he had a thing with the Italian director of business or whatever at Creighton, and he came over and spoke in 1980, and he was saying, don't get into healthcare because it's too capital intensive and someone else sets your fee. He says, I'm going into a business where it's not capital intensive, someone else set your fee. But some of these young kids, they look at old guys like me and they just say, he's just a fuddy-duddy. Healthcare should be free. But if healthcare is free, then that means that from Adam Smith to today, everything we learned in economics about shopping on price and having skin in the game and being motivated and said, so all of that's just... Was that all like Mickey Mouse cartoons and we just throw it all away? And Bernie is right. The government is the best manager of all resources. And when they steal money from one person to pay for health care for another, that's better than you having some skin in the game.
So let me ask that for those that would say the government is the best manager of all resources, can you at least give me one example?
Yeah, and even the post office, when a Marine came back, Fred Smith in Memphis, and said, I'm going to get my Marine buddies and do an overnight package, the United States Postal Service already had a post office in every city for over almost 2 centuries, and it took them, 10 years to respond to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that I'm definitely a Milton Friedman fan. I'm definitely Miller Modigliani, another, economist way of thinking, as well as Adam Smith. And, I believe fundamentally that healthcare, one of the reasons why it's become so screwed up is that it's not clear who the customer is. Think about it. Who is the customer when it comes down to a healthcare visit? Is it the doctor, right? It shouldn't be because he's a provider. Is it the patient? Not really, because the patient has an insurance company that's paying for the visit. Is it the pharmaceutical company, right? Because the pharmaceutical company is, going to get a prescription related to this. Who is the customer and who's the absolute end provider? It's become so opaque, so ridiculous. It's not clear. And because it's not clear who the customer is, people have taken advantage as middlemen along the way. And that's true with administration. It's true with the pharmacies who basically way overcharge. They overcharge even on drugs that I'll give you one example of this. So I have high blood pressure. I have had since I was 13 years old. It's a legacy of a disease I had called IgA nephropathy that thankfully I survived through and it was fine, but it left me with hypertension. So I've had to try different blood pressure medications my whole life. And one time I went to my doctor and he wrote me a prescription to, Diovan. So I started taking Diovan. It was fine. I went to get a prescription renewal and they gave me this other drug called lisinopril. Well, lisinopril was approved by the insurance company, whereas Diovan was not. And so lisinopril is what they ended up changing my prescription to. Well, for the next 2 years, I was coughing like crazy. And I had no idea why I was coughing. And one day I was seeing my doctor for an annual physical and I said, man, I don't know what it is, but I've been coughing like mad for the last 2 years or so now. It's driving me nuts. And he says, oh, you're on Diovan, right? I said, yeah, but actually they give me this stuff called lisinopril when I go to the pharmacy because they say it's generic. And he said, you can't take lisinopril. The side effect is it makes you cough. This is ridiculous, right? And this is exactly what's happening in healthcare, where you are basically being taken for a ride on so many layers because there's not clarity that I am the customer. And ultimately, I am the customer as a consumer, as a patient. And dentistry has kept that nice and clean. And that's why dentistry is not crazy. Nobody's bitching about dental costs spiraling out of control. That's just not the way it is. Whereas in healthcare, you go in, I have a friend who broke his arm. He got a $64,000 bill from the hospital. $64,000 bill for a broken arm. And the hospital's expecting you to negotiate down and say, no, I'm not going to pay that. So they basically padded all this extra cost into it. There are so many things like that across healthcare. I hope that dentistry stays as far away from like universal health insurance and coverage as it possibly can. It has thrived and done really well for a long time because it has stayed in the cash-based space where it is now generally the envy of the doctors that participate in the reimbursed segment. It's become the envy of those doctors because those doctors are thinking about how do I get a percentage of my business to be self-pay. So, even if there is a super, left-wing agenda that is basically played out on universal health care, whether with Bernie Sanders or, anybody else that comes along after Bernie Sanders, I think that dentistry is going to be able to stay kind of off on its own as long as the dental community understands that it's much better, as you said, right, to make sure you control your billing practice, because you've got to have all the responsibility for the capital investment. If you have all the responsibility for the capital investment, you need to be able to have control over your pricing. You need to be able to have control over the experience that your patients are getting. And if you break that model, everything starts to get screwed up. So I've been a big proponent of self-pay healthcare for a very, very long time. I believe that there should be catastrophic insurance.
Right.
I believe in catastrophic insurance. Absolutely. I believe that, one of the only good things that came out of the Affordable Care Act, candidly, was this notion of, pre-existing conditions, so that pre-existing conditions could not be excluded, right, from coverage. And I think insurance companies, if you look around the country, what are the tallest buildings in every major city? What signs do you see on those tall buildings?
Insurance companies.
Insurance companies. There's a freaking reason for that, because they're selling fear. Think about it. And I'm not trying to denigrate the need for having insurance in society, but, a long time ago, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to pay for like all the bells and whistles on car insurance, and I'm going to have a large deductible. And I've saved so much money because I never, knock on wood, I don't have car accidents. I haven't had car accidents. And so because of that, I'm fine. And if I did have a car accident, I'm happy to pay out of pocket for the first $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. But catastrophic insurance is definitely a must. I don't think people should be going bankrupt because they can't afford, or their families shouldn't be forced into medical bankruptcy because they can't afford insurance. But I truly believe if you want a good experience for healthcare, have it be between the doctor and the patient. Keep the government out of it.
Yeah, and people always forget that. I mean, this country was founded in 1776, and from 1776 to the end of World War II, Americans had no problem with their health care. I mean, they were fine, and it was affordable, and it was fine. And their biggest purchase is still a house, and their second biggest purchase is still a car, and their third biggest purchase back then would have been the heart attack or the cancer or whatever. But then the government decided they should manage this, and they've managed it to where now a cancer or a heart attack can cost more than a car or a house. And even if it but the young kids, history is always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Milton Friedman was the smartest economic genius of all time. And it's funny, you're from you lived in Salt Lake, right?
Salt Lake, uh-huh.
And Milton Friedman's most amazing speech, called Myths That Conceal Reality, was given in 1977 at University of Salt Lake. And insurance, again, 100 people have car insurance because one guy wrecks his car, and everybody pays a little and it covers that. Everybody has fire insurance, and, I've in my area where I live, I've seen one house catch on fire every 10 years for 3 decades. We all pay a little, but really, health insurance, that's not catastrophic cancer or heart attacks, but every time you get a sniffle, you want to go to the emergency room, and you want that to be free. Yet when you take your family to a Mexican restaurant, that's $50. You're smoking $15 a day in Marlboro cigarettes. You look at all the money they spend at Disneyland, Disney World, Netflix, all this stuff like that, and they have skin in the game. That's why they're switching from the Disney Channel to Hulu to Netflix and all this. But once you take skin out of the game, like I already see the small examples where the smallest copayment, like 5%, and they'll say, man, I'm getting my hip done, and it's $75,000 in Chicago, and I got a 5% copayment, but it's only $40,000 in Parsons, Kansas, and that's where my sister lives. So I'm going to drive from Chicago and go stay with my sister to go from a $75,000 to a $48,000 hip. And that's all because of a 5% copayment. So when you basically, if you think something should be free, you are mathematically completely out of your mind, and you're going to take 5,000 years of recorded history and just flush it down the toilet. That is how disconnected from reality you are if you think any resource should be free. And the same people that are saying healthcare should be free, then they turn around and say there should be a carbon tax. It's like, make up your mind, man. You sound like you're a schizophrenic. But what has got you excited today?
This relates to healthcare or just life in general?
Dentistry. You're on Dentistry Uncensored. It was an honor to get you to come on the show. We've known each other for a long time. What's got you excited about dentistry today? What made you want to come on Dentistry Uncensored?
Actually, what's got me excited today is, and I think dentistry is actually good at this better than regular, the standard healthcare or overarching healthcare is, and that's looking at prevention. Think about it. As a child, I remember from the time I was the smallest I can remember going to see a dentist and talking about preventative care. And I think it's because the reason why the paradigm in dentistry is so focused on prevention compared to the rest of healthcare, which is very much sick care, right? It's because I think it's a cash pay market. And because it's a cash pay market, you've got a balance between, hey, I've got skin in the game. I don't want to basically have to pay for this. So, and I don't want to go through the pain of this. We've all experienced toothaches and abscesses and whatnot, and having to get root canals at some point in time or another. And so I'm going to take care of my teeth, and I'm going to go see my dentist, every 6 months, and I'm going to get a cleaning done. I'm going to floss daily. Think about how much effort goes into dental care prevention, right? Compared to healthcare prevention. We don't even do it. What do we really do for healthcare prevention? Let's be real. And maybe we talk about diet and exercise and those types of things, but I think it's so much broader than that. So one of the more recent companies that I founded, which is called, it was out of Concierge Key Health, has a product called Access Elite. And Access Elite is a program that includes all healthcare providers on a wellness as well as standard healthcare platform. So you have everything you can have access there, and it's on-demand access to top dentists and medical specialists, but also wellness specialists too. And we've been out selling this to corporations, and it's going extremely well. We launched it in Orange County, California. We have about 30 companies on that. And it's very much a platform that's oriented around prevention and preventative maintenance in general, so that we're not treating sick care, and that's the only paradigm of healthcare. I mean, think about it. If all of a sudden every single time doctors can make money is based on people being sick, is that really a good way to be trying to focus a healthy population on staying and remaining healthy? I mean, if I'm a doctor, of course, I think it's a great thing to want to help people get better from when they're sick and when they're ill. But if it becomes a perennial part of who they are, that we're constantly all on so many medications and so sick all the time, and we've got to be fixed and given another medication to be fixed, that's not exactly a good paradigm of healthcare. Look at China. China as an example. China has had their traditional Chinese medicine thing for a long time. And in China, you pay the doctor when you're well. And if you get sick, you stop paying the doctor. It's exactly the opposite approach, because the doctor didn't keep you well. So now, and there's obviously a part of it that's the patient's part too. But this is a completely different paradigm where you're paying the doctor on a wellness basis. And I think that this is a trend that I think is very interesting, very exciting, so that healthcare is not just one of sick care, but more about prevention. And I believe that dentistry is already a leader in that way, because it's been forced to be that way, because there is a co-responsibility. There is a responsibility on the part of the patient to ensure their own health and success.
So if you go to Access Elite now, mm-hmm. I love it to where you just enter your phone number and then you send the link to download the app right to the phone. Mm-hmm. So I've got the Access Elite on the phone. By the way, that you're the only person that I've seen that does that on a site. But what is this Access Elite? And I'm so obviously you have an app. I can't believe Delta Dental's been out since They started as the Longshoremen's Club Union dental benefits in 1948 when our stupid government passed a law that wage freezes.
Mm-hmm.
So then the violent unions that go all the way back to the Bolsheviks said, well, we it's against the law to ask for more money. So they started shaking them down for whatever they could. And they didn't pick housing and cars and gas and coal. They just picked dental and started with that. But I can't believe it. Every single day someone comes in, do you have insurance? Yeah. And they got a piece of paper. I got to have someone call. I got to call them. And, I mean, they're just so ignorant. I mean, Jobs came out with that app and the smartphone in 2007. It's 2020. You have an app. Delta Dental and every dental insurance doesn't have an app to verify claims. I wish you would just go into that business. Really, you're a mathematician. I wish you would just start a universal app so that Obamacare, that was what's so depressing about Obamacare. You say now it's unaffordable. It's like, dude, 30% of the cost is shoveling paper back and forth.
Well,
and they're on 4,133 different practice management software systems just in hospitals. It's like, dude, fix any of that, and it's all affordable. But anyway, so talk about download your app. What is on your app, Access Lite?
Access Elite is a program, and I'll tell you where it came from, why I had the idea to start this program a few years back. And it's because I had to go see a urologist. And I have a concierge doctor that's my general practitioner, sort of primary care doctor. And I have a relationship with him. The reason why I pay him this concierge fee is because I want to be able to see him on a moment's notice, because I travel a lot and it's not that expensive and it's worth it. Plus, he used to work at UCI, University of California, Irvine. And then when he left out of there, he sent me a letter and a few other patients. He said, look, you can do a retainer with me. I can only take 400 patients. And I was like jamming to get my credit card to him so I could get him on the retainer because I didn't want to lose him. Now, when I had to go see a specialist, there's no more concierge service, right? And I had a high PSA level. You guys are hearing about all my ailments. I had a high PSA level. And so he said, you need to see a urologist. So I said, well, when should I get, how hard is it to get in to see a urologist, and who do you recommend? He says, well, you can shop around, but I recommend this guy at UCI, and he's a really top urologist. So I tried to get an appointment with this person. It was a 13-week wait. Well, if I've got a high PSA level and, there could be a prostate cancer issue, don't know, thankfully I didn't. But I didn't want to wait 13 weeks. That seems like an awful long time to go to see a specialist. So I started looking up other specialists that were urologists, and all of them were quoting like 12, 13-week wait times. And I thought, this is messed up. There needs to be a concierge on-demand service that include all the specialists so that I can go. And also I wanted to include, we expanded it to include wellness. And so it includes all kinds of stuff on there. If your wife has a baby and you need a doula, we can have one sent to your house. If your company had a party the night before, they all need IVs the next morning, then we can send that to your company office. And it's all part of this platform. We have 500 providers now on the platform across traditional healthcare, all specialties. So top cardiologists, neurologists, you name it. We've got even psychiatry and everything on the platform. And so we thought, well, we really need this kind of a program for all of your healthcare needs. And by the way, one of the things I hated was every time I go to a doctor's office, I'd have to fill out all the same paperwork I filled out at the last doctor's office, right? And that's a pain in the ass. So I thought, well, why can't we just put your whole health history onto the app? And then the office can download that, right? And we'll do it all in a HIPAA compliant platform so that there's no issues with HIPAA.
And there's another classic example, like the government, they always come up to you with a baseball bat, they break your leg, and then they steal your wallets, take half the money in tax and say, oh, well, we want to help you get a wheelchair. It's like, dude, I only need a wheelchair because you break my leg. This HIPAA thing, I mean, it should be right now that I go to the doctor, they take an x-ray, he could give it to me on my smartphone, and if I wanted to have a radiologist from anywhere around the world, the best available, maybe it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and some radiologist from India wants to read it. But oh no, your buddy, the buddy, the government that kills 6 out of 100 people for 5,000 years and shakes down for all your taxes and all this stuff. They passed laws so that I can't have this done. I mean, and then they talk about OSHA. I mean, ever since they had all this, like you're in California right now, right? So San Diego was the tuna fish capital of the world, and everybody ate tuna fish there. Then the good old government decided that it was environmental, that they didn't like it. It was not environmental friendly, and it was dirty and all that. So they regulated it till it died. So now the whole industry left San Diego. I mean, they have museums. I mean, it was the birth of San Diego. But did anyone in California stop eating tuna fish? Oh no, they just now get it from Asia. And they've done this from 1980 when I got out of high school to today. 50 million jobs have been regulated to Asia from your good old buddy, the good old government. And I just hope these kids can learn to read Free to Choose by Milton Friedman, read Myths That Conceal Reality from when he gave it there. But, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Whenever I hear Bernie open his mouth, I think, all right, you guys, you didn't read your history book, so we're going to have to repeat this incredible lesson. So Access Elite is what you're motivated about now.
We had one of our companies went public last year in 2018, and I guess a year and a half ago now, and almost 2 years ago. Wow, it's almost been 2 years. And that company is called Evolus. It's a new neurotoxin technology that we...
What's the name of the company?
Evolus, Evolus.
Evolus?
Mm-hmm.
Evolus, like Evolve?
Right. That's right, Evolve. And it was one of the original, Strathspey Crown companies, part of the Alpheon portfolio as well. And I'm excited to see that company do really well. They just made their announcement on, their fourth quarter, and they've done a fantastic job. They have a great leadership team and CEO. We are large shareholders, but we're not the only shareholders now in the company because it's a publicly traded asset. And we have other companies in our portfolio that are also in healthcare. But
talk about Evolus. Why? What's Evolus?
It's a replacement. It's a competitor to Botox. And
you were telling me about that a couple of years ago. Yeah. You and Dorfman.
Right, Bill Dorfman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got some competition to get more views on YouTube than my Dorfman interview. I mean, that's like 10,000. So how's Bill Dorfman doing?
I haven't talked to him in a while, but last I heard he was doing really well. But Robert Heyman, who you probably know very well as well, he's on the board of Evolus, and he was on the board of Alpheon, and he and I are very good friends.
And the founder of Discus Dental.
And
what was his dad was a...
Yeah, his dad passed away like 2 years ago now, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Giorgio of Beverly Hills was his dad.
Giorgio of Beverly Hills. What a great man.
He was really a philanthropist, and it was interesting. I talked to Robert about it, and Robert just idolized his father like so many young boys do, or at least hope to do. And it was very sad when he passed away as well. But he left a phenomenal legacy in Southern California of all of his great work. So,
well, I bet his most Fred Heyman was Robert's dad, founder of Giorgio Beverly Hills.
Right, Fred
in
Heyman.
1964. But I thought it was so good that here's Fred Heyman, Meg's son Bob, his son, who has a friend in school who's a dentist. But just taking everything he learned from marketing his dad, realized that dentistry, the Dentspies of the world, the impression control, it was just boring. Right. I remember having dinner with John Miles, who was the president and CEO of big old Dentsply and everything, and here's Discus Dental just crawling up, taking market share because they had impressions that were purple and green and raspberry and flavors and all that. And John Miles just said, "Man, that boy's a genius." He said, "I've been in this space 30 years. Never even thought about making an impression material raspberry." And so I bet Fred Heyman's greatest feeling was seeing Robert run off with Discus. That was because that was just all Me Too products plus good marketing and just marketing. I mean that's what perfume is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great to see. It's great to see that those companies do well. We have many companies in our portfolio, but 16 in total now across healthcare, fintech, as you listed them off, also clean energy, and we like to try to take a unique approach, more an entrepreneurial approach. We like to go in markets that are highly regulated and help move them towards deregulation, or find ways to work in a way that is less regulated within the current paradigm. And and so we can be more customer centric and focused on their benefit. One of our other companies in our portfolio is a company called Luminos, which, if you like golf and you watched over the weekend Tony Finau down at Torrey Pines, he was wearing one of our Stamina Pro patches on the back of his neck, and those patches are doing really well. So you can look for Luminos or Stamina Pro patches. They're pain patches that work great. And again, it's a non-pharmacological approach to pain that has just grown dramatically, and also has a fantastic management team and leader in Matt Case, who I spent, I was with him on Saturday. But basically, I'm excited about lots of things in healthcare. I'm excited about things that are going to be focused on really keeping people well versus having to have them be sick first to return them to wellness. And I think that's just a model that needs to evolve with time.
So do you think
products on that?
Do you think with Access Elite, I'm noticing, we're in Phoenix, a lot of retired people. I got a lot of senior citizens, but I'm starting to see people who have gone to the subscription physician, where, it's common out here. Well, you'll meet a physician who's tired of the Medicaid, Medicare rat race, and they give their own cell phone number and to a couple hundred people. Do you think that's going to be a material impact? I mean, I doubt it's 1% of the market today, but
yeah, you think as far as like a concierge model for I think if the concierge, I think it needs to evolve outside of just a concierge model, and I think it needs to become something more mainstream. And I think if you look at the millennial population of today, and this is where Access Elite focuses its attention, they really care about wellness. I mean, they all go, it's like amazing. They'll see acupuncturists, they've got massage therapists, and there's even new careers now, things like sound baths. I'm like, that didn't exist as a career when I was coming out of college. It'll be a sound bath therapist. But that's, kind of what people are thinking more and more about. Yoga, mindfulness, these things are becoming huge trends that are growing at breakneck pace right now. So I do think that the millennials will be pushing this kind of wellness attitude because they're sick and tired of the sickness focus that healthcare has had. And they want to eat differently. They want to live, more healthily. And so what we do is we go to the corporations and we say, look, how important is the millennial generation to your hiring and your workforce? And generally, pretty much every company right now is focused on how do I hire and retain millennials and give them benefits that are going to be powerful for them, instead of things like gap insurance, right? Millennials aren't thinking about gap insurance. They'd rather have something like access to Access Elite. And it's not very expensive. It's a very, very affordable program. You can buy a wellness version of it, or you can buy a wellness and a healthcare pass for it. And it's kind of like Clear at the airport. All of us have been to the airport, and some of us are probably members of Clear, where you don't have to wait in line. You can kind of go to the front of the line, and that's basically what Access Elite provides for the patients that are on the program. And we largely focus on corporations, and corporations are happy to pay for their population of their employee base to have the access to this kind of benefit.
I want to switch gears completely and remind my audience that the guy you're listening to is a humble man, but he's very intelligent. He's a mathematician. He's a scientist. He's in all these things. You have another company called Alpheon Credit. And I got another friend who was on the show, Paulo Melo, who invented the All-on-4 out of Lisbon, Portugal. And he's having to file a BK because he started financing these All-on-4s for people. And now he's short $7.4 million US dollars, and 88 creditors are jumping on him and all this stuff like that. And back in the day, dentists would carry their own paper. And then some of them would get in trouble. And then it went away to like the care credits, and now you have Alpheon. And now you're starting to see it come back. There's some people talking about, well, just carry your own paper. So you're a mathematician. Paulo Melo's did this. So and you have a product to sell that does this. And my kids, a quarter of them are still in dental kindergarten school. The rest are all under 30. When a patient says, it's $1,000, and the patient says, I'll give you $100 a month for 10 months. We're all good. Talk about that. What does that make you think?
You know what makes me think of an analogy, actually. If I know some great dentists, probably the best in the world, and if you had to have a brain surgery, you probably wouldn't call one of your dentist friends.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
right.
if all of us needed to have a brain surgery, you're going to find a top specialist. I mean, look, go to a dentist because he's a great dentist, not because he knows how to manage a portfolio of debt, which is really hard to do, by the way. There's FICO scores, there's management of those FICO scores. I just had a company in that was telling us how they use AI to measure 2,300 points of information on each patient on whether or not credit should be issued to that patient. Now, do dentists have the time to manage all of that? And then also, how do you repo their teeth, if they can't pay? And dentists are very nice. So they're generally nice guys in the community. Everyone likes their dentist generally. And so what are you going to, he's going to go now and take a baseball bat and say, you got to pay off or I'm going to break your knees. That's not, it's not the way most doctors want to play in the credit space in healthcare. So what we've done with Alpheon Credit is we've created a model that allows you to get the benefit of being able to, get more patients approved. And we have great approval rates. We'll do 340 million or so in loan volume this year. You'll start seeing us now, if you haven't already, at all the major dental shows. I know we had a big presence at New York, the Greater New York meeting in November. And our teams are going to all the dental meetings now. We started out predominantly in the plastic surgery and dermatology space and ophthalmology, where we've captured quite a lot of market share.
That was going to be my next question, so I don't mean to interrupt, but why? What does dentist, dermatology, ophthalmologist, and plastic surgeon have in common?
Self-pay.
Explain that to the homies, because they don't know the difference between a family physician and an internist. What does dentist, dermatologist, ophthalmologist, plastic surgeons, and oftentimes veterinary, like Shine and Patterson, both have veterinary.
Totally.
Explain what those have in common that an internist and family physician does not have in common.
Pretty much all of them are in the self-pay category, or at least a large part of their revenue is in self-pay. So in ophthalmology, LASIK surgery is a self-pay procedure. There are new procedures called SMILE in the ophthalmic space, which is kind of a replacement in a way, intrastromal type treatment for LASIK. There's also,
say that again. What ophthalmologists are doing? What?
They're doing self-pay procedures.
Yeah, but what was the procedure you said?
SMILE, SMILE, and it's a company innovated it out of Germany called Zeiss, and it's a new type of treatment that allows for LASIK without having to cut a flap in your eye. It creates an intrastromal treatment.
By the way, if you
thing.
There was a dentist friend of mine, Craig Steichen, and for Christmas one year I bought him the Zeiss microscopes.
Great,
because my boys, I bought my boy Eric one, and the Zeiss microscope. I mean binoculars.
Beautiful.
You can go outside and when it's completely dark, and it's not night vision or whatever, and you can just see in the dark. And anyway, I bought Craig Steichen a pair of that, and he still says it's just the best binocular. So Zeiss is an amazing company.
Yeah,
but dentists, dermatologists, ophthalmologists, and plastic surgeons and veterinarians are self-paying.
They're all self-pay, and dentistry has been by far the largest of those, because there's I don't know what the latest numbers are in dentistry, but something like 120,000, 130,000 practices in the U.S. and something like 160, 170,000 dentists. I think the latest numbers I saw, and probably more than half of them are on your dental town. So probably more like around 110,000 plus, I think, are on dental town, as I just a quick memory thing. But basically all of these segments are trying to, how many people need hair removal, for example?
Hair removal?
Yes.
You had to ask that to a bald man? Really? We're not putting this up on YouTube. He's too damn good looking for YouTube. We're only putting this out on iTunes. We just killed the YouTube video. But hair removal. Actually, I can't even get hair removal because I went down there, so I'd never have to shave again. But they said you had to have black, coarse hair, maybe dark brown. And I'm Irish. They said your yellow, red stuff won't absorb the laser. So I'm bald and couldn't even get laser hair removal. How belittling is that?
So it's pretty funny you say that. But basically, I used to say when I worked in the laser industry and we sold hair removal laser systems, how many people need hair removal? Well, nobody needs hair removal, but lots of people want it. And our society is very much driven by what we want rather than what we need. Right. So basically, these segments in dermatology and plastic surgery, how many people need breast implants? Well, it's a matter of how many people can be convinced that they want breast implants rather than the other way around.
You see the data on that. Isn't that kind of coming down? It seemed like it was a really big deal in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it's definitely come down. It was kind of at around, and I haven't looked at the numbers on this in the last couple of years, but, there were about 300,000, breast implant procedures. But a few years ago, I know it's come down and it's probably flattened out. There's also been some major recalls that have happened again.
By your friendly government. Oh, silicon's bad. Sues them out of existence. And then 5 years of research later, like, oh, those were O.J. Simpson's attorneys, and it's now they FDA approve. It's like, okay, well, are you going to go back and restore those companies, friendly government, who prints $1 trillion of counterfeit money a year? Can you print some money to go restore them? Oh, no, we don't do that. We never met. We're sorry. So veterinarian, that's another thing where Patterson Shine.
On your dogs. Do you have dogs? You have a dog?
I have 4 dogs.
I knew you'd have. See, I asked plural.
Can you shoot me? Can you kill me over Skype?
I knew that you'd have more than 1 hour. That's why I said, do you have dogs? Rather than do you have a dog? Because you just seem like a guy that loves dogs. I don't know.
That's a nice way of saying that he knew I was insane.
So basically, I don't know. Whenever I go on a trip and I'd have to leave my dogs at the vet, the bill was more than if I sent my brother to a hotel.
Yeah.
Legit, right? It's that expensive. So it's like, and you've got my dog on the counter, and whenever the guy says, oh, you need this for prevention, when it comes to my dog, I'll be like, oh, do whatever is necessary for prevention for this dog to help this dog so that it doesn't get really sick. But when it comes to, like ourselves, we're not willing to part ways with that money. So you can't believe how much money goes into the veterinary space. Again, it's a self-pay space. And I think, that's why there's this common bond that happens between plastic surgeons, dermatologists, ophthalmologists, and oculoplastic surgeons and dentists, and then all the different specialties within dentistry that have a very high percentage of self-pay. And by the way, all of them are envious. I can't tell you how the ophthalmologists complain to me about how well the dentists do in self-pay compared to them. And I'll give you an example of it. First of all, an ophthalmologist has his toilet break because he's on insured healthcare, right? He has his toilet break and he calls the plumber. The plumber comes to the office. He plays with the plunger for 3-4 minutes, and then he hands the ophthalmologist a $900 bill. And he says, I fixed your toilet. And the ophthalmologist says, what? $900? I don't even get that for performing a cataract surgery. He says, I know, I used to be an ophthalmologist. So
like plastic surgeon, I get it. Their top procedures are liposuction, tummy tucks, facelift, breast lifts, dermabrasion, forehead lift, ear surgery. Your veterinarian, I don't care what you think about your dog. You have to account for 5,000 years of recorded history. And when times are good, you only eat cows, chickens, sheep, and pigs. But when they go into a depression, you start eating your horse, your dog, and your cat. But so when times are good, when I drop off my dogs at the kennel, I never said no to upgrade. Well, on Saturday we're having a play center. Yeah. Well, and then we have a bath. Yeah. Times are good. But if it was 1929 and your 3-year-old couldn't eat, you'd say, come here, Mowgli, your dinner. So you have dentists, dermatologists, ophthalmologists, plastic surgeons, veterinarians are all pay to play, or are all self-pay. Do you think how long you been in this space?
Well, in healthcare, I've been in 27 years.
27. Okay, so 25 years, 2020. 25 years from now, let's go to 2050. Do you think dentistry will be more self-pay or more collectivism, socialism, employment, government paid?
I think it's going to stay about where it is.
So you kind of like the homeostasis it's at now?
I think it's a great homeostasis. I think let it stay in that and because it's not where the costs are spiraling. So nobody's really focused on the dental side of healthcare from a health insurance spiraling cost perspective. They're so focused on everything else. I think that's a perfect place for dentistry to remain, and where dentists can do well and thrive. And my one encouragement would be that for those dentists that are coming out of school, out of the big dental schools, the Loma Lindas and the Creightons, et cetera, of the world, that you come out and be excited about serving your patient and the customer. Because, you'll never let your costs spiral way out of control or the price to the patients get out of control if it really starts to impinge upon your ability to have word of mouth spread positively about you. There is a balance there. It's like, just because the government's paying for it doesn't mean that you can just sort of forget about the experience for the patient. And that's what I mean about the customer not being clear, right? In the healthcare world, it's the payer that they worry about more when I'm talking about, sort of standard, non-dental healthcare world. They worry more about the payer and keeping the payer happy than they do about making sure the patient has a great result sometimes. And that is what is a big concern to me. And if dentistry can stay as far away from that as possible, I think dentistry will continue to thrive and do really well. And we'll see,
I want to switch subjects completely because my homies listening to you don't know that you're a very accomplished mathematician. I mean, you have multiple publications in unified mathematics, physics, discoveries of quasi-prime numbers, and we have this coronavirus going out in China. Ooh. And we had the Spanish influenza in 1918. You've been in healthcare 25 years. You're a mathematician. You know a thing about prime numbers or two. What are your thoughts on this Chinese coronavirus?
Well, first of all, I walked in the office this morning. I see my general counsel, and he's wearing a mask. He looks like an ape with one of these big masks he bought at Home Depot, right, for painting and stuff. And I'm like, well, I guess this is because of coronavirus, because we had 3 cases that got announced over the weekend. And one of them was here. At least one was in Orange County, in the Orange area. So,
and the other one was a guy at ASU, right up the street from here. He came back from Wuhan, right here. So, so the Spanish influenza. I mean, 1918, 33,365,000 people died in 263 days. What's the difference between now and then, or how do you see this today?
I think it's true. Nature has a way of sort of culling the, and culling its own population. I mean, I hate to say that, but this is what does happen. There was a big scare in 2014 on Ebola, which, luckily it looks as though that's now, gotten under control. But this one is particularly, I think, frightening to the world because all of a sudden people were talking about it. It was only about a month ago that I watched a program before they even discovered the coronavirus, that they were saying that there's going to be another virus that the earth is going to, yield up that is likely to, have a hugely damaging effect on population. And in particular today, where people are reticent to get vaccinations. Vaccinations, even when they are available, people are not wanting to get it. And I candidly sympathize with them on some respects because, while the vaccinations have been tested for their own, to gain FDA approval, what no one has ever tested is the consequences of compounding the aluminum preservative that goes into the vaccination. And now they do these booster shots with multiple vaccinations. And there have been some pretty frightening studies that have been done around the world. And candidly, I don't trust the pharmaceutical companies. I used to be one of the CEOs of a pharmaceutical company. I know how it really works. It's not that they institutionally want to do the wrong thing at all. That's not the case at all. But in reality, they're very much driven by what's going to get us the highest return because, there was a CEO that was the CEO of Valiant that announced very openly and clearly, my role is not to be concerned with the public health. My role is to be concerned as a shareholder, and I have a fiduciary duty and capacity that I have to basically provide. the highest returns. That means prices could go way up, and that means that we're going to be profit driven. And there was a whole TV show made on Netflix about this particular CEO, who is no longer at the helm of the company. The company changed its name from Valiant to another name. But the truth is that I think that there is likely to be quite a scare off of this coronavirus thing, because it is spread through the air. I mean, I just kind of read up a lot on it yesterday, and it looks as though it could. It presents in symptoms that seem pretty innocuous and non-problematic. So that means the virus can basically gestate over a significant amount of time before people realize that you even have it, which is kind of really scary. So this is why they shut down the Disneyland in Hong Kong just over the weekend, and they're really kind of going into lockdown mode in China. And I know the Center for Disease Control is very concerned about this coronavirus, because the last count that I saw was 56 people had died from it already. And they only discovered it on, I want to say the very first case of it was on December 19th. So we're talking about in the last 1 month. So it's going to require a lot of vigilance. I'm not sure that everyone's going to have to wear masks like my general counsel is here in the office today. But I certainly hope that is not the case. But it's something we definitely want to keep on the radar screen.
You just came out with a new book, Mirror of Consciousness, and I saw it on your Instagram, but you have 100,000 followers on Instagram. Are you a rock star or a mathematician?
No. I that one shocks me probably more than anybody else. I just started drawing and doing a lot of artistic work that related to the mathematics that I have been publishing and discovering, and all of a sudden I picked up quite a lot of followers, and some of which are some of the top mathematicians in the world are in the followership of my Instagram page. And so I published a book that had been requested because people can't really look that closely at the detail of pictures that are on Instagram. So they wanted actually a book. And so I put together, about 300 or so of my pieces of art and mathematical work that goes along with it. And I published it in this book called The Mirror of Consciousness. And it went out in December, and it's done pretty well. Yeah,
I mean, you what an amazing mind. I mean, you have another one, the etymology of a number. You say whenever new knowledge of a transforming nature permeates the race, the standard of world culture rises. What's if a lot of these kids are coming out of school and they're saying, Howard got out in the golden years. He got out in 87. They're getting out in 2020. What's got you excited about, if you were coming out of school today, 25 years old, and you had a doctor of dental surgery in the United States of America, Canada, around the world, why should she be excited that she's alive and a dentist at 25?
I have a TED Talk where I talk quite a lot about this topic. And the topic of the TED Talk is Beautiful Minds Are Free from Fear. The name of the conference that I spoke at for TED was Beautiful Minds. And I talked about being free from fear. The most empowering and most important thing you can do, I think, as a new doctor or dentist going into the world, is to manage how you think about the world around you. That maybe, just maybe, the way you perceive the world around you will have an impact on what you experience. Now, let me just put this as a question to you. Is life really what we experience, or is it rather what we thought we experienced? And we've all seen cases like O.J. Simpson case or whatever, where there were, in certain cases, like total eyewitnesses, 30 eyewitnesses to the scene of a crime. And yet there are 30 different accounts of what the truth of that crime was. And they're all swearing under oath of what they saw. People all see the world differently. We can see the world as a heaven, or we can see it as a hell. And it really comes down to how we perceive the world. If we want to perceive that the world is happening to us, the universe is happening to us, or if we want to see the world and universe is happening for us, it's really a shift in our own mindset. And I think that mindset thing that you can take with you by realizing that in this world, we tend to attract the things that we judge until we no longer judge the things that we attract. The things that we spot in other people, the world is against me, blah, blah, blah. All these things we're looking at through a prism of our own right? We have our own lens on the world. And so if we want to see the world as a positive place, it will be a positive place. If we want to see the world as a very negative place, it will be a negative place. If you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right.
So, but say that the things that we judge, what was the quote? The things that we judge.
So we all attract everything that we judge until we no longer judge that which comes into our life that we're attracting. So we attract what we judge until we no longer judge what we attract. And this is why you see so many times people will choose. I'll just give you an example of this.
Yeah, can you dumb that down? Not for my audience, but just for me.
Sure. So I have a guy in my office here who's fantastic, and he works in accounting. And so I had to do these offsite meetings all the time. And at one of the offsite meetings, I asked him, who here likes to gamble? Well, the only guy that really raised his hand was the accountant. And why did you laugh?
Because I'm thinking accountant would be too smart to gamble. You know, the house wins.
Right, exactly. And so I said, so I wanted to dive into this deeper. I want to understand, why is it that you like to gamble and you chose accounting? Well, maybe he chose accounting as his career because he liked to gamble. And he wanted to control himself and the way he perceived himself and the way the rest of the world perceived him. And I said, well, you know, when you gamble, explain it to me. He says, listen, I know my limits. I never go past my limits of gambling, but I go to the high roller table, right? He goes to the $10,000 hand tables. And I'm like, holy cow, what other things have we chosen in our lives that we chose because we were trying to suppress some characteristic that we like to do, right? Because we wanted to put on airs. You know, why is it that certain, clergy are full of people that, have issues with
demons? Yeah.
Exactly, demons.
Right.
And they're hiding from themselves. And it's because they don't accept themselves. And so what we tend to then transcend towards is to understand that, wait a minute, everything around me is seen through the lens of my own vision. And maybe
I remember you talk about your accountant gambling. I remember when the guy that came out with Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, everybody's like, dude, why are you giving relationship advice? You've been married and divorced so many times we quit counting. But maybe that's why he became an expert, because maybe going through all that. So explain, put that in Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. How do you sell the number one relationship book if you have a problem with getting married and divorced?
Well, you just made my point, which is, in that particular context, this guy probably figured out, it's like, wow, I'm horrible at staying married. And so, and by the way, I am too. But not this time. This time I'm very happy. This time I'm very happy, and I have no intention of going anywhere. But at the same time, I think we all live this sort of lie that we tell to the outside world, whether we recognize it or not. And it could be the smallest white little lie things, right? But we all do it day in and day out. And, I guess you could say, look, I have a doctorate in divorce now because I've been divorced 3 times or whatever, right? And so now I'm an expert on this and I can show you what doesn't work. Or maybe it's just that he embraced that he was horrible at it and needed to learn what it was to make it successful. And then he wanted to share that, or she wanted to share that with other people. I can't tell you the answer to that question, but I do know this, that when we take responsibility for our own lives and we don't push blame on others, because the very first thing we want to do when we feel any shame is to blame it on everybody else. It's everybody else's fault. It's the government's fault. Oh my gosh, this has happened, blah, blah, blah. The plane crashed and it caused my business to go down, or the stock market went down and I graduated the year the stock market went down, and so there were no jobs. And then my life sucked from that point forward. If you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right in whatever it is that you want to do. Everything that happens positive starts as a seed in your mind. It's not just this big lottery that's happening to us. You are an active participant in how you perceive the world around you. So anything that happens to you, could either be the worst thing that happened to you, or might be one of the better things that have happened to you, possibly even the best. You could be fired from a job and then realize, wow, I've just been set free to start my own company and business. And now that moment went from the worst moment of my life to the best moment of my life. It's how you perceive it that is going to matter the most. 90% of what happens to us is what we perceived happened to us, not actually.
Okay, now I'm going to throw you under a bus right now. So this is terrible. What would you tell Kobe Bryant's wife? She just lost her husband, daughter, and she's not feeling, I doubt she's feeling very happy, positive. She's probably screaming at all the gods. What would you tell her today?
I would say to her, first of all, I feel terrible for your loss. And I think everybody's mourning the loss of Kobe Bryant because, in a way, Kobe Bryant represented, kind of like the celebrity who also was just a good guy. And it's really sad what has occurred with that. And you can never diminish, how painful it must be for the families that lost their members, this last day or so. It's just terribly devastating. But at the same time, what I would say to her is this: give yourself time. Because even though this is probably, you feel like the very worst moment of your life, what comes out of this for you, you don't know, but maybe at the end of your life or even 5 or 10 years from now, something might come out of this that has such a big impact on the world that you are passionate about as well, that really was a catalyst for change, either in yourself personally or in the world around you. Sometimes we can't change the cards that we're dealt. It just is the way it is. But how we react to what happens in that, because you could either go into a deep depression and have a miserable life the rest of your life, or you could go into, okay, this is a wake-up call in some way, shape, or form for me personally. It's not that I ever did anything wrong necessarily. I didn't do anything to make that happen. But how I react to that, if I never go outside and leave my house again, or if all of a sudden I decide, you know what, this is going to be a moment for me to find myself in a new way that I never imagined that I could or would. And I think if you go back and look at all the people that have experienced these types of situations, some people just are super sad, and then they sometimes go to deep depression and do terrible things. Or sometimes they go on and use the legacy of Kobe Bryant to really change the world in very positive ways. The choice is hers, but she doesn't need to make that choice now. She can come back to this. She can think about this. But my only thing that I would say is that give yourself time to synthesize, to integrate, and then figure out what you would like to see for the rest of your life. I'm not saying that you can avoid having sad things happen to you. It's impossible to avoid that. We're all dealt a hand of cards, but we can change how we react to those moments. And how we react to those moments can very often have the effect of changing dramatically how we look at them in retrospect, and whether it was the worst terrible thing that ever could happen, or maybe it led to something else. I had similar circumstances where, this past few months, I lost some people that were friends that I was very, very sad about. And one of them is he used to work at Biolase as well, and he's the CEO of one of our companies, Xeligent, which is a snoring device that dentists will eventually be able to do as well. It's a really cool snoring device that basically uses application. It's like a staple that uses a barbed suture that pushes the uvula up in the back of your throat so that you don't end up snoring. And it's a fantastic device. It just got FDA clearance a few months back, and we sell it with Cook Medical. But the CEO of that company is a fantastic guy named Alex Arrow. And Alex had one son that was 11 years old. And his son was his life. He wanted his son to meet with me, and we were going to have lunch together and everything. Well, he sent his son off to meet his grandmother in Sri Lanka. And his son was one of the 300 people that lost their lives, 11 years old, in the suicide bombings that occurred in Sri Lanka last April. And so here it was in the newspaper. He sent his son off to go to Sri Lanka for a week to visit his grandmother and extended family. And he's sitting in there, and he's the one person that dies. He gets hit by shrapnel in this hotel cafe. And so Alex called me, and I was devastated for him. I mean, they called him, his son was still alive, and he was trying to save his son, because he's also an ER doctor, trying to save his son by telling people what to do over the telephone. And it was just not possible. And I wept with this man, because he's a wonderful friend. And I felt so deeply in his shoes in that moment. It was one of the saddest moments of my life. But even he has found a way, to be able to take that and not let it get him down the rest of his life. Even he has been able, he came to my Christmas party that I had. We had a company Christmas party, and he was there, and he brought a date to the party, and he was in good spirits. Obviously, he's created a whole legacy and foundation around his son. And for me, it's a story of upliftment, and it's about who he is as a person. To maintain that positive mental attitude, because as a new dentist going out in the world, you're all going to face difficulty moments. You're all going to face trial, tribulation. You're all going to face moments where you want to give up. And we know that the suicide rates historically amongst dentists is pretty high, right? Don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down. Take those moments and try to find the silver lining. And if you really take the moment to focus in on those silver linings and see the world through as positive a lens as you possibly can, I truly believe that you will come out the better for it. And that's true for anybody, whether you're a dentist or anybody in the world. But that's what I would say. And that's a tough question to ask me, but it's a very honest answer. People need time to let time do its thing and look at things in retrospect. You know, there are moments now that I look back, stupid stuff that I did in my youth, stupid stuff that I got in trouble for, stupid mistakes I made in my career. I look back on all of them now, and horribly sad things that happened when I lost friends, or I lost, I had friends betray me, or whatever. I now look back on all of those things with a kind of a rose-colored glass lens, and I say to myself, well, you know what? It helped me to become who I am. We all at some point in time die. All of us will face it. And it's not something that I think about very often, but actually, if I were to die today or tomorrow, knock on wood, I would look back on my life and say, I've had a wonderful life. Even the difficult times I appreciated, because it made me who I am. And I would not trade any of it. I would not trade or change any of it again. I'm very grateful for the life that I've been given, and for the cards that I've been dealt. And the good ones and the bad ones. It's not only that I'm grateful for the ones that were good, I'm grateful also for the bad ones, because I learned something every time. And it's sad that Kobe's life was cut short. It's so sad. And I was devastated over hearing it yesterday, and so was my wife. He knows lots of people here. We know lots of people that are close to them, because we live in Newport Beach. They lived in Newport Beach. They still live in Newport Beach as well. And how we perceive life, though, is I think, up to us. We can't change the cards we've been dealt, but we can change how we react to those cards.
Well, it was, I can't believe we went well over an hour. Tell Robert Heyman, is he still, last time I talked to him, it was mostly Heyman Properties. He was doing a lot of real estate, high-end real estate.
He's still doing that. And like I said, he's on the board of directors of Evolus, which we took public a couple years ago. And, he's active in a few things in dentistry too. I believe. I don't know all of the things he's involved in, but he's such a great guy and been such an incredible friend to me for many years now. And my partner, Vic Malik, who he's also been friends with him for a long time. One of the other people that is participating with us here is very much involved in dentistry, and that's Joost Fischer. You might remember Joost Fischer, who was the CEO and chairman of Sirona, which became part of Dentsply. Sirona.
What's his name?
Joost Fischer, Jost Fischer.
Fischer?
No, just Fisher.
And so he was with Sirona?
Yeah, so he was the guy that spun it out of Siemens and operated independently, did the deal with Patterson, acquired Schick, and Simona Blanc was his CFO at the time. And I met them while I worked at BioLays, and now they are partners with us here at Strathspey. And I love working with them. They live in Austria, but they're awesome, and they love the dental field. They really love the dental field, and they do a lot in dentistry, and I expect they're going to do even more in the future.
Oh my God! I remember. I just saw his face just pull up. I remember eating dinner with him at the Cologne meeting in Germany.
Yes, we talked about you. He asked how you were doing. I told him I was going to do this podcast with you, and he said, "Tell him I said hello." And Joost is he's become a real mentor to me over many years now. He's definitely a mentor. He helped me through a very difficult time a few years ago. Then I now look back on and say, I wasn't feeling this way at the time, but I now look back on and say that was like a real seminal moment. And I'm so grateful that it happened. I got to learn who I was through that whole thing. And Yost played a huge role in that realization for myself.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving my homies a view of what healthcare looks like from 30,000 feet. It was an honor to podcast you today.
Thank you, Howard, and always an honor. And you have such a big personality, and I love watching you, whether on stage or in other places, or even here on podcasts. And I'm going to start following your podcast now because I know you have a way of being very provocative. In a way that's also not offensive and alarming. You can be provocative and make people think, and I think that's why it's been a big part of why you're so successful in what you do.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you have a rockin' hot day.
Thanks, you too.
And thanks, Kobe, for 41 years. That was an honor to watch you.
Love you, and rest in peace.